I'm Deke Simon, and I wrote film and video budgets with my friend Michael Wiese. There are some benefits to not doing a budget for your film project. More time in the sack, less time doing arithmetic, a plus in my book. There are some benefits to doing a budget for your film project. You get to squeeze every dollar, and that can make your film project look and sound great. Some people, when they're starting out, say, "Help! Give me a budget to copy." Well, there are some budgets around that are worth cribbing from. In fact, this book has several. There's movie budgets, documentaries, music videos, and more. In fact, you can download them for free. But here's the rub. A proper movie budget is like a custom-tailored suit. It fits your project. Every film is one of a kind, so naturally the budget has to be unique. How do we do that? Research. The cost of virtually everything, every person, every piece of equipment, needs to be verified and sometimes negotiated. Like this. "Hello, Sally. This is Deke Simon. I'm doing a budget on a great little film. We may need to rent one of your big yellow school buses. We need to hold 70 10-year-old kids. One day, probably a Sunday, early morning, needs to roll down Hollywood Boulevard. And please, can you give me your best price for starving artists?" Now, how did I know these sort of specific bits of information, like one bus, 70 kids, one day, probably a Sunday, early morning, Hollywood Boulevard? Good question. There's a three-step process to pre-production. Now, this is for fiction. Documentary is a whole nother story, and if you want to learn about documentary, go to page 272 in the book. It's all explained there. But for fiction, there's a three-step process to pre-production. The first step is script breakdown. Second step is scheduling. Third step is budgeting. Now, once we do a schedule, we learn some great information, like, for example, how many shoot days. Let's say it's 25 days. This is great. We have a real number. Let's plug it into the budget. Let's say director, a shoot, 25 days. Production manager, shoot, 25 days. This is great. Everybody directly connected to the film, 25 days. Okay, what happens when we look to prep, director? How much prep time? A month? 2 months? How about production manager? For newbies, it's almost impossible to figure out things like prep time and, for that matter, wrap time. So what do? Well, books like these have a lot of background information that can be very helpful. And when it comes to your project, what I suggest is pick up the phone. "Hello, Frank? You know we want you to be the production manager on Zombies of Beverly Hills because you've got more experience than Zeus. I've taken this budget about as far as I can. Will you look it over and bring it up to standard? And please, pay the guy something for his labors." So that's about it. Good budgets are based on research and a little bit of help. Happy budgeting!